What's the worst movie that you've ever seen? Has to be a real theatrical.
Oh, this movie done set black people back fucking 10 years. Worst movie I've never seen in my life. And I remember, because at this time, I'm probably like 14, 15 probably, maybe 14. But I wanted to see Superman. But my cousin was like, yeah, man, we gotta support black actors. So we're gonna see this movie, After Earth. And I knew it was trash because when I was a kid, I used to like look at reviews, and yeah, I saw it. It was the worst thing I'd ever seen, and my cousin was so convinced that it was good. I had to tell him and break it to him, bro. Like, this movie was ass. Like, it was so garbage. Worst thing I've ever seen in my life. Shout out to Will and Jaden, both talented people. Definitely a blemish on their career. It's quite sad.
What's the worst movie that you've ever seen? Has to be a real.
I just feel like today is the perfect day to destroy this film. Part of what makes this the worst movie I've ever seen has to do with the fact that I was so excited to get my first ever American rom-com with a brown Muslim main lead. If I had known that this was going to come at the expense of brown Muslim women, I would have never wanted it in the first place. I would have never asked for it. I would have been like, no, we're good. Let's just stick with the white rom-coms. We're fine. And for anyone who's confused, let me clarify why this movie is so god-awful. Part of the way that this film emphasizes how lovely and quirky and funny and refreshing his white love interest is by introducing the audience to a quick succession of brown Muslim woman after brown Muslim women that his parents are introducing him to in order to help him find a wife. Every single brown Muslim woman that they bring onto the screen is a caricature. They make every single brown Muslim woman sound ridiculous and act ridiculous and make it so obvious to the audience that he would never in a million years be even remotely attracted to any of these women. Every single time he meets another one of these women, a picture is handed to him, and he keeps every one of those pictures in a box. And the white girl eventually finds those pictures, and it causes a little bit of a rift. And in order to prove his undying devotion to this white love interest, he takes the pictures of every single brown Muslim woman that his parents introduced him to, and he burns the photos. And then he collects the ashes. He puts those ashes in a jar, and then he presents that jar of ashes to his white love interest in order to prove that he only wants her. I thought white Hollywood was really good at stripping brown Muslim women of their humanity. It never occurred to me how incredibly effective brown Muslim men were at never affording a single ounce of humanity to brown Muslim women. It never occurred to me. And this is based off of his real life experiences. So in reality, that's exactly what Kumail thinks about brown Muslim women. It's not a fiction. It's really what he thinks. Incredible. MashaAllah.
What's the worst movie that you've ever seen?
I would have to say the one that comes to mind that is the absolute worst is the live-action Lion King. You can't beat the animated. It was horrible.
What's the worst movie that you've ever seen? Has to be a real, theatrically released movie.
Why'd you have to bring me back to this, man? Why? Why, man? Why you had to do me like that?
This is a prime example of what not to do when it comes to making a good movie. You know, it's almost embarrassing to admit that I saw the damn thing, despite me waiting for it to actually come on cable. Ain't no way I was spending a cent to see this fuckery in theater, you know. But also, it's an example of what happens when you have a director and crew who's more interested in a quota than actually making a creative, original, good movie. I said what I said.
What's the worst movie that you've ever seen?
I don't know. but she probably recommended it.
What's the worst movie that you've ever seen? Has to be a real...
The Blair Witch Project. I will now reenact the movie. What was that? What was that? Is that a bundle of sticks tied together? Whoa, dude, this is getting pretty creepy. Guys, I'm really scared, you guys. Josh? Josh?
What's the worst movie that you've ever seen?
I don't know, but I can tell you the best movie I've ever seen. I actually can't think of it. I thought of it! Free Guy!
What's the worst movie that you've ever seen? Has to be a real, theatrically released movie so you can pick Attack of the Clones.
Yeah.
What's the worst movie that you've ever seen? Has to be a real, theatrically released movie.
The worst movie I've ever seen in my life was called Blindness. And I'm not talking about worst movies in the sense that, like, you watched them when you were a kid and you're like, this is amazing. And then you watch it 20-something years later and you're like, this is fucking terrible. No. I went into this movie fully expecting that it was going to be good. And it was shit. And if you're not familiar, well, let me explain. A bunch of people wake up and they're blind. And some aren't. And some then become blind. And then they start wandering all blindly into a prison where there's more blind people to take shelter. Those blind people don't like the other blind people, so they start segregating in different wings of the prison. Then they have an all-out blind fight, and then they leave the prison, and the main character can fucking see. That's it. That's the whole fucking movie. That's it. There's nothing more to it. Not an explanation why, not why people are immune. I can't see! Now I can. Fuck.
What's the worst movie that you've ever seen?
Please tell me I am not the only one who fell asleep during E.T. when they were a child. I just didn't get it. What was all the crying over the alien? Give me Where the Red Fern Grows. Flicka. Black Beauty. A Day No Pigs Would Die. Something with a real animal.
What's the worst movie that you've ever seen? Has to be a real, theatrically released movie.
Is this even a question? Like, this is an actual question? Like an actual question.
What's the worst movie that you've ever seen? Has to be a real, theatrically released movie. What's the worst movie that you've ever seen? Has to be a real, theatrically released. What's the worst movie that you've ever seen? Has to be a real, theatrically released movie.
I think the answer is super easy. Dragon Ball Evolution. Does that really need any explanation at all? I remember a long time ago in a magazine, back in 2002, I was a little kid, and in that article, it said that Fox purchased the rights to make a Dragon Ball live action movie. I remember I was so excited and so hyped. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't wait till they do that. When are they going to do that? And when it finally was released in 2009, it was the most crappiest thing I've ever seen in my life. It was an insult to Dragon Ball fans and Dragon Ball in general. Goku was the whiniest kid ever in high school, and he was nothing like his character whatsoever. The Ozaru transformation was garbage. All the costume designs and everything was garbage. The CGI was trash. Thank God it made no money, and us Dragon Ball fans won, so they wouldn't make any sequels. I wish that movie was erased from my memory.
What's the worst movie that you've ever seen? Has to be a real, theatrically released movie.
That's freaking easy. M. Night Shyamalama Ding Dong's version of Avatar. That movie blew so hard all my NES cartridges started working again.
What's the worst movie that you've ever seen?
Need I say more? Bat nipples, robin nipples, bat butt, robin butt.
What's the worst movie that you've ever seen?
This is an adult decom. Everything about this movie is trash. The music, the soundtrack, the acting, it's terrible. And I love J-Lo rom-com. She's the queen. But this was the worst.